I was muted. How is class doing tonight? Looks like we're rolling. Let's see here. This works for me. Hey, Nakara, what's up, dude? How you doing today? I got your Real and Surreal project and I created it for you. I would have loved to have gone over it in class. It looked awesome. I like the dinosaur scene. I thought that was cool. Just getting a couple things ready. Yeah, same. Thursday, you know, pushing through everything. Getting busy, you know. Like that busy time of year. It just gets busier and busier. As an adult, like it just holidays all around that time, it just like stacks up and you're just like everyone wants to do things. You're like have to weave it into work and school and all this stuff. And no, that's okay. I understand being busy. Exactly what we're just talking about right now. It looked cool though. I liked it. It fully pulled me into like a weird Jurassic Park moment, and I was into it. All right, so I'm going to get kind of started today with we're going to be going over the principles of motion design, but in Cinema 4D this time. And we're going to be creating essentially something like this. I posted this earlier for you guys to see. As far as I might move a couple things around right now because one of these, this one right here, this like cartoony looking ball, really doesn't go with like the weight one. And I know it says bounce, but it's supposed to be mass or weight. And so I'm gonna, I think, move this one to squash and stretch because it obviously is more appropriate there. What's up, Keith? How are you doing today? Um, and so we're gonna be recreating this today. Assignment overview. If you want to rewatch this later, you guys can. There is one right here for you. And then obviously how to create each one of these. Here's some lessons linked if you're not going to watch live. But I definitely want you guys to be downloading the templates, right? There's the template for the squash and stretch of the dice. There's one for the heavy and light impact of the hammer. And then here is the one for the light and heavy bounce. We start you off with these because these have like lighting and all that kind of stuff set up in it and some camera angles and camera you know, settings and stuff on there. So you guys will definitely want to download these. I have already pre-downloaded them and opened them up inside of Cinema 4D, and I'll just show you guys how to save it with your information on it so that you can have this base template whenever. And let me see, does that, without having to like re-download it later, right? So, and then here's Dr. Farina on this one right here teaches you guys how to composite all of them together, but in this one he misses the third scene, so he only does 2 scenes. And so if you watch this, just make sure that you composite them all together in After Effects with this third scene here. That's why I made sure to add that, right? So he misses, I think, the dice one. Um Yeah, so just make sure that you add it in there, and then you guys are going to be creating a tiny MP4, and then you will be uploading it to one single MP4 with all three principles of motion design into Canvas, and then a tiny version into Slack for everyone to see. And then this is an opportunity, there's an opportunity on this one, this assignment, to get bonus points. So, normally everything is 100 points in class, but you get this option to add a different object or ball, like an added ball or object to the weight scene, or that should be the, where does it say that? Ball or object to the weight scene or into the squash and stretch scene. I changed it earlier. Don't know why it says that like that. Let me get out of this view. Leave the view. Let me see if I can edit this. Weight scene or squash and stretch scene. Update that. Update the rubric. Should be good. If I go to student view, will it work? Yes, cool. So I'm gonna put it in the squash and stretch scene today. But if it is in your weight, if you guys watch this later and have it in the weight scene, I'm not gonna dock you for it because that was original. But you're going to be using like a pepper, right? Or like some kind of object you can do using this like cartoony method. So we're gonna kind of get right into that. So make sure you guys are looking over these when you create your videos, and before you render everything out, go through this, make sure you've got everything checked off the list, and you guys can go at it. Keith, just okay. Everyone, like I was telling Nikar, I was like, everyone gets real busy around this time of year. What's up, Lena? And everyone wants to do things. It's holiday season. It just gets busier as you get older. So it's important. With that being said, right? You know, you get busier and stuff. You just get more responsibilities that end upon you. And I can just say this, making sure that you take time for yourself and like self-care is super important. Whether it's like pampering yourself, going to get like a massage or, you know, face masks, that kind of stuff, right? Because I think everyone can do that. They feel great for everyone, not just women, but men as well. But also, you know, like taking time to listen to your favorite CD or like doing kind of stuff like that while you're just chilling and not like doing homework and not like focusing on other stuff, right? Taking time to do the things you like. Important. Balance. All right, so I have Cinema 4D open here. I'm going to shut my camera off for the rest of the class while we're working inside of Cinema 4D because we're going to be going and doing stuff up in the top section here where my camera's covering, but we also need to see this bottom portion and over here on the side. So, adios for now, and I will see you guys once we are done. And so I've like I said, I pre-downloaded these templates. What I did is inside of my Principles of Motion Design in After Effects and C4D, inside the 3D folder, under C4D files, I created a new folder called Templates, and I downloaded each one of these and put them in there, and then open them up. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save all of them to the file with my name on it, right? So the first thing I want to do is come up here to save and go to Save Project As. And I am going to, let's see, under C4D files, just type my first name, Makara underscore squash. I'm just kind of a squash and stretch. It is not spring 2022, but fall. I don't even need that. Whatever. I can put the year 2023 at the end. There we go. And I'm going to save that there. And then the cool thing about Cinema 4D is that you can open multiple projects and tabs up here, unlike in After Effects, which is kind of annoying. But you can open different ones in here. So I have all three open. So I started off in this one, and then it automatically went here once I save that. Now I'm going to go to the other two, and I'm going to save those automatically. And then that way they're just ready for me to go. So File, Save Project As. I'm going to go back to Cinema 4D files and name this one Makara _ which one is this one? Wait 2023. Save that. And then finally, I'm going to go to this one, File, Save Project As, go here. And that way, I don't have to worry about it. It's all done for me right away. Under, what one is this one? Impact 2023. Cool. All right, and let's start over here with our squash and stretch of this dice. So when you guys open this up, you're going to have the dice right away for you here. You're going to notice that the dice looks like it has a ton of geometry in it, and that's because there is something called a subdivision surface added onto this dice. And so we're going to kind of get into that here. Before we do that, I'm going to remove this floor because we're going to actually put a backdrop in there. So let me... in order to do that, you can come up here into your object manager and you can remove the protection tag. I think you can just delete that. And then I can just delete this floor so it is no longer there. And then I'm going to add, hopefully it's in here. Let's try it again. Studio, backdrop. Oh gosh, are we going to run into this? Let me just type in. We're going to run into it again. Awesome. So much fun when this happens. Okay, so we are going to create a new backdrop. Let me see. Is it really going to do that to me, Studio? Yeah, it is. So, I want to be under node. Nope. Not even going to waste me time. Okay, let me close this. Let me create a plane. And then let's increase the plane width and the, undo that, the height. All right. And I'm going to increase the segments. Let's just do 15, 15. And let me zoom out of here. You guys can always do that and then just cut the angle in nice and tight and move your camera like this so that it's just kind of looking at this. You can do that option too, right? Oh, shoot. Let me go. I undid this. I want to do that again. Let me change my view. I'm sorry if you guys hear water in the background. My I got grass planted, and so the thing's on. And to this plane, we're going to add a bend deformer. And we're going to drop that bend deformer into the plane, right? A child of the plane. That's what we call it. Again, we'll talk more about that later. I'm just going to hide this dice from my view for the moment and kind of just zoom out of here so I can see what I got going, what I'm working with. And I think we have to change the direction that the plane is in. Is it this one? No, maybe it is the direction. I think it's the direction of the deformer. Auto X negative. Maybe it's this way. Let me start to increase. I'm on the plane object. I didn't want to do that. Let me increase this. Okay. So the deformer is changing. You guys can see it kind of bending right there. Let me put this plane object back on. I think it was this way. And then it does need to be a child of the plane. There we go. And it is bending like it's kind of bending it right now, but it's not quite there yet. I think we have to, is it this one? Let's hit auto. You know what we do is we rotate. Hit R, and then we have to rotate this. Wrong way. This way. -90 degrees. Negative 90 degrees, right? There we go. And then I just can rotate the actual here. And then let's show our dice again. Where is the dice? So you had to rotate the bend deformer, right? But the plane is obviously going to be real chunky here, and we don't want that. And so I think the dice is behind the actual plane. Let me move it. Hitting E on my keyboard, push it there. Yep, there it is. Okay, so if I reset my view, now I can kind of see what the backdrop is going to look like behind it. And so I want to increase the amount of segments that are here so I can get a nice bend happening, like a nice smooth bend. So I'm just going to increase that width segments to, yeah, I mean, it's going to stay still, so nothing terrible. 80. And then I am going to increase the, let me move back here, the actual width and height of there we go. Pulling this one, 2 forward. Let me kind of move back and see. The bend is obviously like it's too bent this way. So let me go back to the bend deformer. So it's really just working a lot back and forth. And then I'm just going to drop that bend angle down a little bit more. 90 will be okay. Perfect. And then I will go back to view and we'll go back to frame default. And then we're almost there, but we're going to zoom in anyways on this dice. Probably rotate it a bit. I want to move because we want to get a nice camera view here. We kind of want to set up our shot right away so that we can just work right away in the area. And I'm going to relabel this from plane to backdrop. And then I'm just going to minimize that. And let's throw like a material on this, right? So let me open this here. And I think I can just find a plastic material in here. Plastic. And then we can change it. I want something kind of matted, so this will be nice. And that way when I Control R, it's just like a nice smooth matted look. I'm going to change the color in the luminance tab. Is it under there? Yeah. Interesting. Let me go back here and see if this will work. Does this change it at all? It does not. Boy. I can always make my own. Let's see what they're doing here in the reflectance. Let's make our own material real quick for this. So I'm going to delete that. And then I want to go up here. Notice when you delete something out of your material manager, it also, wherever that material was applied on a layer, it's going to show like this question mark, like, hey, you kind of, it's no longer there. We can't find it. You just go in there and delete it like that. And I am going to, let's create our new one. So we're going to new default material. And then I'm going to double click on the material up here. And we're going to click on luminance and change the color of the material to, I don't know, let's pick like a blue similar to that one. And I think if we uncheck color, we will be able to have the whole ball be blue, but maybe if we could do, undo that. Oh, why is it doing that? Hold on. What's it doing here? Make sure when you're undoing things, you're not messing with other stuff in there. That's kind of neat. All right, cool. Let's throw it on here and see what it looks like. Yeah, it kind of looks so like when the light's shining on it, kind of gives like a lighter appearance. You can always change that too. So if I wanted that color to be a blue, I could just add a little bit more of like a depth there to it. And you notice that the die itself is kind of like transparent, right? It is transparent. It's got a transparency to it. When I hit Control R, you can see that the little numbers on the other side. We'll go ahead once I'm done doing the squash and stretch on this. We'll address that color as well, so I can show you guys how to change it. But let's go ahead and get to animating this dice. The first thing that I want you guys to notice up here is that the die, there's like a main shape, and then there is, let me do it like this. There's a main shape, and then there's another null here, essentially, that says die, right? Well, this isn't a blank null. This null has a purpose, and that is because this is a subdivision surface. Now, what is a subdivision surface and how does it work? I'm not sure. I think I showed you guys what they were before, but I want to kind of touch back on this again so you guys can see it and understand. So I've got a cube here. And I want to see, this should have garage shading, but it's only got 6 sides right now. So I'm going to increase the segments on this so we can see how it's working. So I'm going to do 10. Let's go to here, 10 and 10. Right, so we got kind of like this cube with multiple options here, right? But what if I wanted this cube to look smooth? And not have such sharp edges on it, right? Well, that is when this thing called a subdivision surface comes into play. And so what you want to do is you want to click here and select subdivision surface. And when it comes to this tab right here where there's like different options on what to do with your geometry, it has to be the parent. These ones right here, these purple ones down here, have to be the children of the main layer, right? So what does that mean? Before, I said with the backdrop, when we threw in the bend deformer in there, I said we will make that a child of the backdrop, which means anything I do to the main plane that I had created, or the backdrop, the bend deformer will follow, right? And so when I make the cube a child of the subdivision surface, anything that I do to the subdivision surface, the cube will follow, right? So if I click on the subdivision surface and I were to change like the type of geometry that's here, it will change the type of geometry that we can work with within our shape as well. This does not change the geometry of the shape. What it does is it subdivides, every one of those little segments that we made, right? So if I shut this off, if I pull this cube out, each one of these polygons that you see here becomes subdivided into multiple little polygons. And that is how you eventually get the rounding, kind of like we were adding in segments to get a smooth transition on that backdrop. When we were getting the curve, I said I want that curve to be nice and smooth and not so chunky. And so we increase the amount of segments, right? Because the shorter distance it is between it, the smoother that the object is going to look. And so when I throw this, watch what happens to the geometry again when I throw this cube into the subdivision surface. It divides each one of those polygons by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So then you get 9 polygons within each one. And so that's what's happening. I'm going to delete this here, but that's what's happening here on this dice. And that's why you see in the wireframe view, right? This is essentially a wireframe of it. Why it actually looks like that. I think we can change. Let's see the view here. I want to see a different view of this. So I'm going to hit N, and then I want it to NB. NB. Let's see. That won't work. Let's see if it works on this one. NB. No. Correct. Yeah. So Lena asked in the chat, I was reading your thing, Lena. So the child follows the parent. Correct. Yes. Like always, like in it's a hierarchy, right? In real life, the child follows the parent. And in animation, it does the same thing. We're going to be working, parenting is what it's called. And that is essentially how you rig objects together when creating animation rigs. And we're obviously going to get more in depth with that later, but that is the correct concept that you said right now. So Lena asked if the child follows a parent. That is correct. And would that mean that the cube as a child to the subdivision surface, will it change along with it? Correct, right? The subdivision surface obviously has limits to what it does do, but anything that is a parent of something else, that whatever happens to the parent happens to the child, right? And the child will have its own parameters that you can mess around with and animate as well. But the main lead that it takes is going to be from the parent. So let's say that the parent moved to the left, then the child would automatically move to the left. Like I said, we'll get more into that later, but I just kind of wanted to touch along the lines of like what the subdivision surface does and then why it looks like this child parent relationship, because this is important when it comes to animating this dice. The main shape here would have been the cube, right? But notice how our axis is flipped upside down. That is incorrect, right? We don't want to start animating it like this, because then all of our parameters are going to be upside down as far as numbers go, and it's going to make things a little bit more confusing. And so when you click on this subdivision surface here, you notice that this axis is pointing in the correct direction. And so the other thing you notice is that it's at the bottom of the dice, right? Like our anchor point. Versus when I click on the main shape, it's still in the center of the die. And that is not what we want when we're doing squash and stretch, right? Oh, and we need to let's bring the dice up just a little bit so that I click there. Actually, I'll bring the backdrop down. But when we're doing squash and stretch, we want to be squashing and stretching from the base of the object, right? And so let me just I'm going to go back down there. And just a hair. I'm going to go back into my view here. Bring that up to right there. Notice I can see from the front view that it is now touching the base of the die. So then I'm going to go back to my top view here, or my regular view. I'm going to reset my camera, and then I'm going to reset that frame to be punched in. Kind of nice and tight. We're going to turn this like this, move it a little bit like this. And then we got this nice looking die. I'm going to probably push this back a little bit so that we have a little bit more room to work with the dice. And then because we are also going to add text on here next. So with that being said, let's go ahead and throw the text in. So basically, let me jump back real quick. When you're animating, you can furl that back up and just making sure you're animating the layer that says die and not the section that says main shape. All right. Let's add the text in here. So we're gonna hit text and we're going to back off here. And I'm going to move this over until it's kind of centered to where I want it to be. Back. We're going to scale this. Hitting T, holding down shift. I'm going to scale this just a little bit. E to move it. And then let's change what this says to squash. If I can spell. Squash. There we go. I'm going to move it to the side. Here's the thing about certain texts is that this Q obviously is below, like the little foot, the hanging foot is below the backdrop, and we don't want that. So let me do this in all caps, squash. See what that looks like. Let me change the height of it because it's kind of large. I think 100 will be okay. I'm going to move this over, kind of centered, looking in the frame. Bring that up so I can see here. I want about the same distance from one side here as the other side. And so I'm just going to rotate my camera just slightly and move things over. And push in just a hair so that I have about an equal amount. Like visually, I'm not gonna actually go in there with a ruler and see there, but visually you can see there's about the same different distance here. And so we have our text here. I am going to pick one of the texts that is approved, which I believe Poppins is one of them. It's one of my favorite ones. Poppins, probably because I like to say it. And then again, just moving that up a hair so that that Q doesn't hang below the backdrop here. And let's kind of bevel this. Let's bevel this. Let's increase the depth a little bit. I'm going to increase it to 20 of the text. And I want to add caps. Under caps, we're going to bevel the edge here so that it catches the light a little bit when we go ahead to render everything out. And so I just want to increase the size of this. It is very minuscule and you need to do probably 1.5 will be okay. But notice how then it just kind of bevels this edge. So when I hit Control R to do quick render preview, I can see that it's going to catch the light on some of those corners, which just looks a little bit nicer there. And so I'm going to also, let's see here, subdivision. If I increase this, it's going to make it smoother, right? Increasing the amount, it's going to smooth that out a little bit more. So if I increase this to like 50, look how, look, there's 50 little segments there. It's going to be like fully rounded. If I hit pretty much, like it's not 100% rounded, but it's pretty close. So I'm not going to do that many. Probably like 10 will be okay. Even that is a lot. So just 5 will work. I'm going to save my work real quick by hitting Command S. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my die and I'm going to scoot this over a little bit here because I'm going to have 2 squashing objects happening. And I will finish up the materials and stuff. Let's do that after we're done animating here. So we've got our scene essentially kind of laid out with the dice and the text and the backdrop. And let's animate. So the first thing I want to do is go to coordinates here. And we're going to only be animating the Y position again, like a normal bounce that we do. Control Z. Let's see if I put it at 0. If I grab that backdrop. Perfect. There we go. All right. And I kind of want this to be just slightly larger. I feel like it's kind of small. So I'm going to hit either. I could do one of two things, right? I could increase the scale of the dice, which we're going to be animating the scale, so that might not be the best option at this point. Or I can make the text smaller, which will inherently make the dice look bigger, right? So let's go here to not into the caps, but into object, and not depth, but height. Let's change that to like 75. All right, cool. Going to make it look, the dice is going to look larger. Move it there. And then we can maybe just push in a hair. Cool. There we go. And we're going to select the die. Let's throw in actually a camera in here. And what this camera is going to do, we want to look in this camera view, is it's going to lock in this view for us so that if I uncheck looking, when this little box at the top here, again, is highlighted in all white, it means we are looking through the camera. So you don't want to start moving things and moving your camera view around unless that's what you're intentionally doing, because you want a new camera angle, right? But I just want to lock in this view here because this is the angle that I want to work with. So then when I uncheck looking through the camera and I move this way and maybe over into, I think I'm in object mode. I want to be in world mode. Right? No. Undo that. Change this. I'm selected on the camera. I didn't want to do that. Okay. When I move here to start to animate the squash and stretch, I can look at it head on. And then if I click back onto looking through the camera, it's going to bring me back to that view, right? So having your camera set right away is just kind of smart so that you can say, hey, this is what I want it to look like at the end. And then just making sure you're not looking through the camera when you're making changes and stuff, right? So I've got my camera set. I've got all my other stuff done here. I'm gonna move this down. I'm going to bring this up above, and selecting my die, I'm going to bring this up into the air, right? I want to check my view to make sure that's an appropriate height, which it is. And under coordinates, I am going to lock in that X height. Let me make this -80 to the X side there, just because I like the round numbers. But we're going to start with our bounce. Oop. Let me do this. Bring my playhead to the beginning. And we're going to lock in our bounce here, but let's change our project settings first, actually. So shift, is it shift? It's control D, project settings. We'll probably make this 5 seconds long. So 24 times 5, 120. Yeah, perfect. Okay. 120 frames total. Perfect. We'll just keep that consistent throughout the rest of the project. And so now when I select this, I will have the appropriate amount of frames at the bottom when I start keyframing, which is now. And I want to see the animation section. So I just hit that little keyframe icon down at the bottom. And then I'm going to bring this up so that I can see my frames here on screen. I'm going to bring this over, zoom in a little bit. bring that over to the side. And we're going to just kind of work in 12 frame increments so that we can, it's just easier to do right now. And then we can adjust the timing after we're done, but this should work. It should be a quick enough bounce like this. And we're going to do the bounce the same way that we did the squash and stretch for the After Effects one, right, where it's going to bounce down, it's going to kind of stick on the ground, and then it's going to bounce back up in the air. So I've keyframed this position, moved my playhead 12 frames. I am going to type in here 0 because I made sure that would work. And then remember, whenever you make a change to animation inside of Cinema 4D, you have to keyframe it, right? So it works like move the playhead, change the parameter, hit record, right? So I just want you guys to remember that. And so then I'm going to move another 12 frames, and I'm going to copy this keyframe because it's going to stay on the ground. So just hitting Control and dragging with my mouse, I copy that keyframe. If you guys are curious as to what the keyframe value is, right? First of all, it tells me down here in my dope sheet view what I'm animating, which is the die, and what parameter of that die that I'm animating, which is the position, right? And so if I hold my mouse over any of these keyframes, it will tell me the value of that keyframe if I'm just curious, right? So 70 centimeters, 0, 0, and then I want to move ahead another 12 frames, which will be 36, and I'm going to copy, Control dragging the beginning keyframe, right? Because we are making, again, a seamless loop. Seamless loop. And the biggest thing about a seamless loop is that the beginning and end have to have the same value. This is like extremely important, right? Because you don't want the values to be off, or else you're going to get that hitch in the animation that we're talking about, which looks like a little jump, like it's not moving up to the perfect spot, right? And so we've been practicing these seamless loops so far, but I just want to make sure that I'm saying that again for you guys. And I'm going to play this so it sticks on the ground and then it goes up. I'm probably going to tighten the timing between these two. So actually, let's just kind of move all of this in to 24. So the bounce happens over 1 full second. And then it hits the ground at 8 frames, stays on the ground until 16 frames, and then goes back up. Let's play that and see if that looks a little bit better. Yeah, the timing of that's not bad. I might, right, 12 frames is halfway through. I might move this up 2 frames to the 10th one, so it's not sticking 1, 2 back, because I want the same distance in between here, so it's not sticking on the ground super long. And I might adjust that in a little bit later. Let's keep it the way it is, and then if I want to adjust it later, I will. So we've got our bounce. Let's go ahead and ease these, right? Ease these keyframes. I'm going to select them here. And then over in the corner here, we have F-curve mode, which is our graph editor. Again, I'm going to select that. And we are going to create the bounce, right? Because it swings down. You've got all that momentum on the way down. It's going to stick to the ground and then bounce back up. So I'm going to grab this keyframe, this handle right here. And a big thing to note is I have all of these. If I hit H here, it's going to center my curve, right? And I don't want all of these selected, just this one here. And in order to break these Bezier handles, I need to hold down Shift, and then I'm going to bring that up. Keeping an eye kind of where I'm putting this on my graph in the background, I'm probably bring it to 50 right here, so that when I do this side, holding down Shift, I can bring this Bezier handle up to the same spot. The nice thing is that if you look over on the side where my mouse is moving, it gives you like this little notch up at the top and on the side here that kind of tells you on the graph where you're at, which is fantastic in order to reference, hey, where am I on this kind of grid look, right? And then I'm just gonna move my playhead back, and then nice, that's a good Good looking. Bounce, and I'm going to hit Control save that. And now we're going to add in the squash and stretch, same way we've been doing it before. But I want this bounce to continue going without me having to copy and paste these keyframes left and right. And so I'm going to show you guys this little trick that we're going to use throughout class today, and that you guys are allowed to use anytime you need to, that is going to speed up your workflow, right? Because normally what I would have to do is I'd have to select all these keyframes and then hit Control and drag them holding down Shift and then move them to the exact spot, right? And we don't want to do that. We want this to be easier. And then, because what if later on I need to make changes to that bounce, right? It's going to be hard because I'm going to have to make change to each one of those iterations of the bounce. And so what you do is you just select this. It has to be down in your timeline right here, right? And you're going to select your position. And over here, there's an area that says before and after. And this is a looping option that you can add to your animations. And that it's going to automatically just kind of duplicate it and create a loop for you. Now, we don't really ever use before because we don't want to loop anything before because we're starting at the beginning, right? So we want the looping to happen after. And we don't want it to be constant here. So instead of the constant option, we're just going to select repeat. And then notice that all of a sudden there's these repetitions happening back and forth that go on forever, right? Like I can keep going and keep going and keep going, and they will always be there, and it's always going to loop endlessly, even beyond my 120 frames, which is what my project is set to, right? And so that's awesome. So now if I play it, it's just going to constantly bounce and bounce and bounce. Here's the kicker to this, right? If you're going to add any other parameters to animate within after doing this, it has to always end, like there has to be keyframes that always end and begin at the same spot, right, on the timeline. So I don't want to, before what we were doing is we were moving in and we were starting the squashing and stretching right here. Or we'd put the main parameter at 0 right here, and then we'd move in a few keyframes and then start squashing it. What we have to do is we have to make sure that that 0 parameter, where it's fully its normal scale, right, has to be at the beginning here. Because what will happen is when you start to repeat that, it's going to desync with the bounce, and it's going to look really funny. And so I'm going to show you how that happens. You zoom in and out of your timeline. Lena asked that question. That's a great question. Using the 1, 2, and 3 keys, and then clicking and just kind of dragging your mouse, right? So holding down 1 allows you to move, similar as how it allows you to move in your viewport. Holding down 2 allows you to zoom in and out. And holding down 3 would normally allow you to like rotate, right? But we don't need to rotate here because we're in a 2-dimensional space right here. And then let's say you end up kind of like all out of the place. You just hit H for I don't know, Heather on your keyboard, and it will zoom into the graph that you're looking at right there. It'll center it for you so that you don't have to like go searching and try and line it up and stuff yourself, right? So good question there, Lena. I am going to go back to my dope sheet view, and I'm going to bring these back in. I want it to be just slightly shorter, stick into the ground. You guys can have it longer if you want, if you like it the way it looks like that more. But then notice that now all of the iterations beyond that have adapted this change that I made here. And so now let's go ahead and add the squashing and stretching keyframes. So we're going to grab let's bring our playhead to the beginning, and we're going to grab that die again up here. And we need to animate all 3 parameters of the scale happening, right? Because it's, remember, whatever amount that it scales out, it has to you have to deduct that. Remember, we're doing the same thing. It's all the same options there. And so I have over here, notice when I all of a sudden hit that keyframe, it automatically added the scale, making sure that you want to add the scale all at once, right? Because the basic size right now is 1:1:1. That's the ratio, the scale ratio that it is, which is the normal size at the beginning of my timeline, because I don't want that to desync. And I'll kind of show you what it looks like desync later. And then I'm going to move in a few frames and I'm going to duplicate this. And the reason I'm duplicating the scale here is because I don't want, actually undo that. I just want to grab the scale keyframes and move that in. I had accidentally grabbed the position as well, and I don't want that. The reason that I'm putting, duplicating this a few frames in is because I don't want this squashing to start happening until later on, before this hits the ground, right? So once it hits the ground, we want it to fully be squashed on the floor. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to, which side are we going to squash in? We're going to squash out down this way. So I'm going to do 0.6 and I'm going to keyframe that one. And then I'm going to do 1.4 and keyframe that value and 1.4 here as well. And make sure that that keyframe is changed so that when I look at it like this, right, it's squashing in the appropriate, in all dimensions and not just in one or in two. You have the appropriate amount of squash happening. And it should show up. There we go. For some reason, it's not showing up right away here until I click into my F curve or to my dope sheet. So just letting you guys know, if it's not showing up there, just click on here and it will. Hovering over there, I can see that is the scale. I'm going to move backwards to a couple of frames before here, before it's going to hit the ground, right? And I'm going to keyframe this to be stretched out. So I'm going to select the die again, and we're going to do, what is this, 0.4. Is it that one? No. Let's just reset it at 1:1:1 so we can look here. And I think it's going to be the, yeah, we're going to stretch this way. So 1.4. And then we keyframe that. And then this is going to be 0.6. Is that what I did? That is wrong. Let me undo that. 1, just resetting these values. I'm going to hover over here and see what I did. 1.4, 0.6, 1.4. I did do that. Okay, so 1.4 here. Nice and stretched out. I'm going to keyframe that. 0.6 here on the X and 0.6 on the Y. Or on the Z, I'm sorry. So then we have this squashing happening, right? So it's going to come down and squash, and then we want to just reverse that here. Silence my phone. Silencio. Okay. Moving there. I'm going to keyframe this one, or just control drag this one to there. And then I think this one was 3 frames in from the end. So go to the end, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to grab these ones and just these ones and control drag it. And then I'm also going to control drag it over here, right? And so now if I play it, we had a cool looking squash there, but it stopped. Why did it stop? Right now, all of a sudden, it's not squashing anymore. And that is because we have to add that repeater to the scale property. So I'm going to select the scale property down here in the timeline and then go to constant and hit repeat. And now when I play it, the scale is also going to repeat with the, along with the position change, right? So if I put it into my camera view, we've got this nice looking squashing dice that kind of looks like flubbery, right? So if I zoom out of my timeline here, let's just kind of go click the scale. Let me do this real quick. Let me show you guys what it looks like if I delete these keyframes here, and why the keyframes have to all line up to the same beginning and end is because when I start to play this, and I think you guys will see it more in the F curve, but when I start to play this, it's going to, the squashing and stretching is going to desync from the positions. So it's going to squash and stretch appropriately at the beginning, but then all of a sudden it's kind of just going wiggly and wonky and crazy. And that's because we need those anchor, like they're like an anchoring keyframe, right? To anchor it at the beginning. So I'm just going to select that one there, and I'm going to control click and drag, control click and drag here. And then when I play it again, it's going to appropriately be squashing and stretching at the same time. And so I'm going to save this because I did a chunk of work here. Control save. And let's select the scale. And then we're going to go into the F curve mode. And we're just going to kind of, I'm going to grab all of these ones right here in the middle. And we're just going to bring these out. Holding down shift. That's the nice thing about this is you can do them all at the same time here. Ooh, holding down shift. How far did I bring that out? Let me see. Let me undo both of those. Okay, I'm going to grab, and this is nicer because you can grab all of them at once in here and do this versus in After Effects, it doesn't allow you to. So I'm going to drag it. Okay, it's probably 1.5 right here. And then the same with this one right here. Right about there. Nice. So now when I play it, really kind of like the spring-loaded squashing and stretching, which is also kind of driving the momentum back up, right? So it looks real cool. So I'm going to save that. Hitting H, I'm going to go click on here, go back to dope sheet mode. Let me kind of zoom out of here a little bit, move it over to the side. And we are already done with the dice, which is super quick. You guys shouldn't have a problem with the squashing and stretching anymore. I know we've done like everything's been bouncing and stuff right now, but we're gonna move on to some more fun stuff next week, where we start doing rigging and whatnot. But I just want to ingrain these principles into your brains. And so I wanted to add another way to squash and stretch something in, I wanted to give you guys another technique here. And so it was, before it was in this weight, or it said bounce before, but it used to be in the weight or mass project. And I'm just going to delete this out of here. And we're actually going to put it in the appropriate one because it should be in the squash and stretch. And so I'm going to create a ball, a sphere, and I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, and holding down shift, I'm just going to click off and drag here. And that allows me to just kind of change the scale of this evenly in all different directions. Probably 80s, right around 80s, fine. And then hitting E, I'm going to move this up and over this way. And I kind of want to see, I'm going to look at all my views here just to see that it's kind of in center. It is. I want to just make sure that the die and the ball are on almost the same level, right? So I'm going to zoom out, go back in here. And let's create the bounce for this ball. First, before we do that, let me, we're going to select this, and we're actually going to change, okay, 70, perfect. We're going to put this at positive 80, so they're at the same distance away from each other. And actually, let me go into 65. And then the cool thing here, right, is because inside of Cinema 4D, normally like in After Effects, if you've already started keyframing stuff and then you try and change the position of it, if you didn't separate your dimensions, it changes your keyframes and then your animation's all messed up. But because in Cinema 4D, you're required to change the value and then keyframe it, and you have option to do this over all of these separately already, right? I can take this die and move this die in without changing the animation at all, right? And so I'm going to put this in at -65. I think before, what is this one? So I just want them the same distance apart. Yeah. 65, -65. And then at the beginning, this thing's at 70. Perfect. Save this. And with the sphere, I am going to go into the object and I'm going to increase the segments here so we can get it nice and smooth. But I'm going to change the way that their geometry is created on this ball specifically. And so what I want to do is, instead of standard type over here on the side, I'm going to come in here and change it to hexahedron. And when I do that, you're going to notice that the geometry wraps around the ball in a different way, or the wireframe does. And it gives you more of like this smoother, laid out uh sectioning of it, and it's actually easier to work with a sphere when it is segmented up like this, because you have this nice smooth kind of corner here where the seams meet, versus before it all kind of joined at the top here, which kind of pinched everything together. This is more evenly distributing these polygons amongst the surface of the sphere, and so it makes it easier to animate later on, right? And so I've created the sphere there. I'm going to save that, change the type that it is, and we're going to animate the bounce, right? So we're going to do the same thing here. In fact, I am going to throw this into subdivision surface. No, I don't actually need that for this one here. So I'm going to drag that out, and then I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to select the sphere, and I'm going to go to coordinates, and we're going to start keyframing things. So I'm going to keyframe the top there, and I'm going to furl that up so I only see my sphere right now. And then I'm going to move into, I think it hit the ground right around here. I'm going to do the same. Drop this ball down. And I want to go to the sphere properties. Where are they at? Okay, I'm going to hit 0. But notice here, right, 0 is 0, putting the anchor point. It's bringing the anchor point down to that 0 value, which we don't want. So I'm going to just bring that up. And I'm going to go to the side here, the side view, and just make sure that my ball is not poking through the base of the thing. So I'm just going to type in 22 here. Ooh, is it going to be going through? Probably just barely. Let's not look through our... Just slightly, but no one's going to see, right? So we're okay. And then I'm going to go back to this view, bring this over here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, rotate so I can see the rest of the ball. And I'm going to keyframe that, right? Because I changed the value, I have to make sure I record that keyframe. And then I'm going to move to flattens out to 14 here. And I'm going to select that position. And if you don't want to see all of these on here, if it starts to get kind of crazy looking, I think you can just click this and you don't have to see it. No, you still see them, so never mind. I thought you could do that and shut it off, but I don't want to do that. Undo. Why did you do that? Okay, there we go. Just select your position there and you'll be able to see. So I'm going to hold down Control and I wonder if I can reverse these. Automatic wing clamp. No, no, no. No. Okay. Undo that. I just want to take this one. Control, copy, grab this one, control, paste, right? So the ball is going to bounce at the same time. We want to add that looping factor to it, right? So I'm going to select the position and change it to repeat. And so we have the ball bouncing. And then let's go into the F-curve editor and we're going to create that actual bounce. So holding down shift, I'm going to bring this up to about 50. Notice how it visually changes these repetitions for you as well, which is really cool. Holding down shift, bring it up into about 50. Right there. Nice. We get this nice bounce happening here. And I'm going to pause that, save it, bring my keyframe to the beginning. And inside of the deformers area, right, before we use the bend on the backdrop, but now there is an option in here called squash and stretch, which allows you to add squash and stretch to your object without having to keyframe your scale positions, right? And so I am going to add that to the object. And because this is a deformer, it's got to be, I think, a child of the sphere. And when I select this, squash and stretch deformer, and I go into the object tab, and I start changing things like the factor, you're going to see that it's changing something, but something's off, right? What's happening here that's weird? The anchor point doesn't seem to be in the center of the object, right? If you look here, the anchor point for the squash and stretch is in the center of the world, or in the center of your workspace here. And so we want it to match up to the anchor point of the ball itself. And so in order to do that, you don't have to manually move it around here. There's an option at the bottom that says fit to parent, and you have to select that. And once you do that, you notice that anchor point moves to the center of the ball. And so now when I start to change this here, it also changes the geometry in the appropriate spot, right? Like we don't even have to have the squashing and stretching really happening at the base of the object right now. We could do that if we want to, but there's actually an option down here which allows you to kind of choose where that's kind of neat. We might be able to work with that. It's a parameter on the squash and stretch that allows you to kind of taper your squashing and stretching and where it's happening. And that's the center here, right? So if you keyframe the center along with your factor option, you can create this animation where, you know, like when the ball's going down, a majority of the weight's going to be at the base of it, right? But when the ball's bouncing back up, a majority of the weight is going to be at the top. And so you can just kind of change where the weight is shifted based on where the center of this is. And so we want to move to the beginning here. And let's reset all of our, I think if you control click, alt click, no, shift click, there's a way to reset the values. Or you just type it manually right there, right? Negative 22. The negative 22. Okay. And so at the top of the bounce, we don't want the squashing really to occur, right? Let's see the position there. We want the squashing. We're going to initially keyframe the factor here at the beginning at 0, right? And we want this to be fully squished out here in the center of where it's on the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I think, decrease that factor to, let's do 30. That's way too big. Maybe 50. would be okay. The only thing with this, right, is that it doesn't allow for, first of all, the ball like is still off the ground here, right? Even if we're at a camera angle higher, it looks fine. But the squashing just looks like it's kind of odd for the weight for it. So that's why this isn't my favorite technique to use. But it allows you to get this really cartoony look with your ball, right? Because the mass of this object looks different when it's squished out like that. But I'm going to keyframe that factor right there. And then I'm going to bring it back here to the 8th keyframe. And then we're going to start to kind of bring that up. 140 will work. Keyframe the factor there. It's going to come down, squish, and be okay. Let's see what that center option does. Because maybe if we start changing the center, let's move the center to the very bottom. Yeah, that might be a good idea. Let's try that, and then let me see if I move the, or I'm sorry, let's move the bottom. What do I want to do here? This is the deformer, right? Like you can actually see it moving up the object. Well, so that section of the object all of a sudden it is not being affected by the deformer. So this is something we don't want to mess around with. So let me hit, I think that was -22. I'll leave it there. We kind of want it to look like an egg while it's going down. So I'm going to keyframe the center here. Up at the top, I'm going to keyframe, bring my playhead back and keyframe at 0. All right. I think that I want to look at my dope sheet view so I can select the squashing and stretching here. Move my playhead. I think 6, 8 is kind of where I want this to be. It's going to move down, kind of look funky there. It's going to squash. Let's move the position down further, right? Because we want this to be on the ground. Ooh, when I start to, ooh, that's a crazy way to make a UFO. But that's not what we're going for at the moment. Right here, I think it's going to be back at 0. So the center will be 0. Right there. Bringing this forward. And we're going to be -100 for the center, and then the factor. What was the factor last time? Let me see here. This one, we want to copy paste. So bringing that over to here. We're going to control click this and bring that over. I know it's very confusing the way they layer things on here. And you're like, why does it look like it's stacking on top of everything else? And that's because it is. But if you want to make sure you're selecting the correct ones, you just click on the option down here and it will show you that these are the keyframes. These are the keyframes that correlate to what you're working with right there. And so I want to take these beginning ones right here. Let me grab, that's not it. If you hover over it, you're able to see, I think it's this one. Yeah, this one right here. And I'm going to control click and drag over this way. And so should bounce down. That weight should be mostly at the base of it. Squash, bounce back up, and the weight should be opposite here. So I'm going to go back into my squash and stretch. And then the center, we want to keyframe that at, I had to click off of that. We want to keyframe that back at -100 here. So now, Okay. The mass of it is at the base. It's going to squash. And then a majority of the mass is at the top. Looks good. I'm going to grab this and we're going to go into the F curve mode. And we're just going to kind of exaggerate everything a little bit out. All right, and then we, again, have to repeat this, right? So selecting the squash and stretch right here, and then going to after constant, and we're going to hit repeat. And so now it is going to repeat that kind of real cartoony looking squashing and stretching. Let's say that the ball, we don't like that the ball isn't exactly touching the ground, right? That kind of is bothering me. So I'm going to pause this right here. And I'm going to bring this into right here at the 12th keyframe. And I want to add in, what I'm going to do is add a null. So this object right here, again, is a blank layer, right? That can control whatever I make a child of this layer, right? So if I throw this in here and then I make the sphere in the squash and stretch a child of the null, I can select the null because the null doesn't have any keyframes on it. And I can just bring that down so that when I am looking head on here, it actually kind of makes contact with the ground, right? And then I can just take the sphere in the squash and stretch out of the null, and I can delete that null. And then my ball, right? It's not going to go up to the same height as the dice was before. I would have to actually change my keyframes for that. But if I look through my camera, and then I go back here and play, it's not too big of a difference. It doesn't look that bad. But kind of this just real squashy and stretchy looking option here. And now let's add some materials to this so that we can make this start to look pretty. And I kind of want to bring this, change my camera angle just slightly so that I get like a higher, I kind of want a higher tilted angle of the actual objects, the objects themselves. And let's kind of bring it to about here. Right there is okay. We're at full size for both of these. And the die, remember I told you guys that the die's material, if I go in my material manager up here, was kind of this transparency. If I hit Control R, it's kind of this transparency red. If I double click on this, and actually there is a window viewer, window render viewer here. I think I can interactive render region, which is up here, right? So if I click and hold down, you have your render viewer, which is going to show you the entire thing. But I want to go to my interactive render region, which allows me to have an area where it's constantly showing me what the render preview is going to look like, right? So that way, and I can change the size of it here, I can see what my material is going to look like as I'm changing this, right? Which will give me an idea of more what it's going to end up being the final look of. And so in the transparency section, there's this area that's called the absorption color, and that's the color that is a that you're seeing being absorbed into the object, right? So like think of the density of an object, and for instance water, right? Water looks, if you hold it in your hand, it's super clear. But if you see it in a mass, like in the ocean, it looks blue. And that's because of the absorption color of it, right? It's absorbing essentially like the color of the sky, but like, and then the further deeper you go, right, the center of there, it's going to look black, right? The deeper into the ocean that you go, it's black because there's no light being absorbed in there, changing the colors or anything. It's just like a lack of any colors, a lack of light. And so I can change this absorption color to be like a pink, right? Let's see here. And then if I go to, is it the bump? Not the bump. I wonder if I can add a luminance here and change the actual color. Let's try that, but then let's also go back into the transparency here. And we can start messing around. Oh, notice how like I change the absorption distance and all of a sudden that color doesn't go there anymore. So let's do 0.4. Let's do half of that. And it's more solid now. So let's do 0.1. No, let's do 0.02. That do anything? It's not working like that. 0.8. Let's try that again. Right up here. You can change the color of the object as well. That is very intense pink. Drop the brightness down. Nope, that didn't work. Let's go back to that white. We start increasing this absorption distance and we're looking like we've got like kind of this block of ice almost. So let's do 4. That looks good. That looks more like a die you'd see. Probably even less than that. Probably like 2. No. Yeah, no, let's keep it at 4. I thought 4 was cool. And then that absorption color you can change if you want to. I'm going to go back to this kind of brighter looking pink. Put this back at 4. And then you can still probably add a color in here if you want to. But I'd be very, very like, I'm going to remove this luminance here. There we go. If you take that luminance channel off, everything looks a lot better. And so if I start to increase this pink color, I get more saturation here throughout the transparency. And then so if you want to change the color of your dice, come in here into the transparency and you can adjust the color up here and then the absorption color as well. And then the distance, the absorption distance. And so I am going to click off of that and save because I like that. And then with this ball here, if you go into this weight mass template, you have this toon material here. And I'm just going to hit Control C and I'm going to see if this works. Control V, and it sure does. And so I'm going to drag this and I'm going to drop this down on my ball. And notice that there is kind of this line that happens around this, right? And so when I click off of here, if I shut off this interactive render region, and come on. This, by the way, there's a tiny little triangle right here on this interactive render region. And if you drag it up, it's going to make it look more sharp. And if you drag it down, it's going to make it look more pixelated. So you can see kind of, because this is at the expense of your computer and what your computer is capable of. And so if you need to drag that up, like saying, I want to see it in full def right up here, you can do that. The problem here is that it looks a little choppy around the edge. But let's open this material and kind of look in here and see why there is this kind of outline that happens on this material. And if you go into the luminance panel, there is a section under here that says texture. And under that texture, it says Fresnel. I know it's spelled F-R-E-S, but it's pronounced Fresnel. And notice that it's kind of separated here, right? So you have this white section and then you have this black right here. Well, this is determining where on the object this section is. So if I double click on that and go into the shader, it's like a gradient right here. And so if I grab this and I push this further over here, it's going to make the line a lot thinner. And then if I take this, this works just like a gradient bar in any program, right? So inside of After Effects, inside of Illustrator, if I take this and drag this way, I have like a larger stroke around the outside, right? But then I have this nice smooth gradient moving into the white. And if I want that hard outline, I just have to bring these closer together to get that nice hard meeting of the colors right there. The cool thing about this is I can add another shader in here. I can change this if I double click on it and I'm like, okay, I want this one to kind of be like a purple, right? So let's kind of let's make this a lighter one. And then this white one right here, we'll make this like a deeper looking purple. And we're going to kind of build our own gradient here. And then this black one, I can click on this and even make this like a deep shade of purple, like a really deep purple. So it's not exactly black, but it almost looks like it. And then I want to just kind of bring that over to get a nice smoother looking gradient there. And so I have like this kind of cartoony cell shading look with this material here, which is really neat. Now, I'm going to save this again. And I'm going to shut off this interactive render region. Okay. I want this. Let's click off of that. Let's go to render preview there. Okay, cool. Now, when I go ahead and start to play this, oh, shoot. I am looking through my camera. See, now I messed up my camera view because I wasn't thinking about that. So now I'm going to have to kind of refigure this. And then I want to bring this and see where, okay, cool. Now notice how that outline kind of still stays around the object, but it just shuffles based on whatever perspective you're in with that. I'm going to go ahead and not look through my camera anymore. I'm going to kind of move head on right here. And then I want to add a material to the type as well. In fact, I'm going to change this matte blue to like more of a, that's okay, like an aqua color. I'm into that. Okay, that looks a little bit better with what I have here. And let's throw a material onto the text, just a new default material. In fact, I'm just going to go get I think a plastic one for this one. Or even a metallic one, right? This one's not bad. A matte plastic white, that'll work. Drag that right onto there. If I hit Control R, I can see that. It looks all right. I think I'm going to do a metallic color. Let's do something fun. Cool, that works. Dragging that onto here. Control R. Neat. Okay, I have this cool looking color. There are no shadows or anything because we do not have any lights in our scene. And so that's a big thing we need to set up here, is we want some lights. So I'm going to go back into my camera view, and I'm actually going to pull my camera view out just slightly here and probably bring that down, out, and up. I think that's a good spot here. And what I want to do is I want to go in here and I'm going to add a target light. And that light, the target light, it will create a light, but then it will create a light target. And the light target is what is pointing at your object, right? So you move this light target to wherever you want it to kind of focus that light on. So it's like a spotlight, if you must. And I'm going to kind of just move this around and center it using my multiple views here. In fact, I'm probably going to move this over here a little bit. And then I'm going to zoom out here because I want to see where the base of that light is. I'm going to grab that light and I'm going to probably just kind of move it in slightly. Take that target and bring the target up. I want to zoom back out here so I can see from my right view what's happening. I'm going to bring that target up a little bit to kind of point there. I'm going to go ahead and get back here and I'm going to hit Control R to see, okay, it's lit up pretty, not too terribly, but I want to add an additional light to the scene as well. So I'm going to take these and move them down here. And I'm going to create a new blank null, and this is going to be, I'm going to rename this to Studio. And I'm going to drop the lights and the camera and the backdrop into that null as children. And then I'm going to drag this studio down here so that we are just looking at the studio section. I'm going to save this. And I'm going to duplicate, I think I'm going to create another light on its own. So another target light. And I'm going to move this one again into the studio. Backdrop, holding, oh, come on. Right here. I'm going to rename this light 2 so I know which one this is. Or you can also name this key light, right? So this light is going to just kind of fill in everything for us. So key light. And I want to just adjust this into place here. So I'm going to move back here. I want to kind of see everything right now. And I want to move this light to the opposite side. So making sure I'm holding onto the light right now and not the actual target. I'm just going to kind of move that light to the opposite. I'm going to bring it up a little bit and push that in so that it's not so far away from our actual object. And then I'm going to grab that target and make sure that the target is also pointing on the light or on the objects as well. And so I'm going to hit Control R to kind of see. Nice, I've got some light coming in from this kind of upper area kind of behind my camera, and then also some light coming in from the opposite side here, which gives us some really cool looking highlights on our object here, but we're still not seeing shadows, and we want to show shadows on there. So what you got to do is you have to go into your light object, and you want to go to the shadow tab here in the corner. And under no shadow, we're just going to change it to shadow map soft. And then all of a sudden you see these shadows kind of appear. If I hit Control R, you can see the shadows happening both on the dice, on the ball, and also on the text as well. Remember, the text is hovering in the air slightly because of that cue. So, you know, if this said stretch, you might not have that big of a deal. You could push this down to the ground. But we also want to, let's go back into here. The color of the shadow is like a black. That's fine. Let me go into general here because this is our main light, right? And so the intensity looks good. I kind of want to get this like a warmer light. And so we're going to use temperature here. And I think the K scale, let me see the Kelvin. Light, I'm going to Google this, temperature scale. So it can give me an idea of like what kind of light I want to look for here. And we can just click on here right now, and we can see that with 6,500, which it's at currently in here, is a daylight look. And I really don't want that. I kind of want like a warmer view of that. And so we're going to kind of drop it down maybe around 5,000, I think will be okay. Where it's kind of dropping in between this zone where it's not super warm because I don't really want it affecting the colors of my I don't really want it affecting too much the colors of my objects, but let's see here. So 4,000. There we go. It gives us kind of this yellowish hue to it. I'm going to hit Control R. There we go. We get something cool looking there. And then, oh, neat. In fact, this is a new update. It changes the color of your light based on whatever color you change it to. Super cool. But I want to turn the shadows on as well in this one. Shadow map soft. And so you're going to get these shadows kind of going behind. This is how you can tell where your lights are too. The shadows moving this way are obviously less intense because this light is further behind. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the intensity of this light here. It's probably to 80. so that it's not so that's not our main light source, right? The main light source is coming from the side over here. You can in fact increase the intensity of the light beyond. If you grab that there, you can increase it beyond 100%. So if I went to 150 in here and then I hit Control R, you can see kind of like these hard shadows starting to form. But you know, I think the 100 looks okay. I might increase the. You can also add right down here too. If you don't want to go into the shadows tab, you can add your shadows here under this, and you'll just shadow map soft. Let's go back into here. If I increase the density, it's going to make it darker. So if I hit Control R, it's just going to kind of stand out a little bit more. You're going to get a harder edge, right? The only hard edge shadows that you really ever see in your environment are going to be if there's a spotlight on it, like a very harsh light, or the sun is like directly above or right behind you or something like that, and you look down and your shadow looks hard, right? Like a hard edge shadow. Everything else is going to be very subtle looking. And so this one is pretty much done. Now there's an option to get extra credit here for this week's assignment, and you do that by just putting a new object into this, like this deformer, using this deformer to add it to a different object. Now the nice thing is, right, we have already done, I'm going to rename this here to toon ball. We've already created we already did all this work, right? And so we don't want to redo it again. And so we're just going to select that toon ball and we're going to copy it and paste it so we get a second one. And I'm going to close this one up here. And this second toon ball, I am going to just kind of move it back here behind. Remember, as long as I'm not moving it in the Y plane, I'm doing okay because I'm not changing any values if I'm moving in the X or the Z. I'm going to move it to the side here. And let's say we want to create put like a different object here instead of the ball, right? So I'm going to go into here. Any kind of objects you would like to see kind of squished and weirdly deformed. Let me go into models. Usually something with gambling. Oh, dice. Something that has kind of natural curves, not going to be hard edged. Before we did fruit, or we did let's do this pineapple. Is it going to work? No, it's going to require that subscription. So this is going to be a pain. We could do the apple. I guess that's like the only one. Or the banana. That's kind of dumb. Let's type in vegetable. Vegetable. We could do an onion. Maybe not, because the onion's red shift. We could do this onion. We've done the pepper before. Oh, the garlic would be cool. Let's do this because it's kind of odd shaped. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to drag the corn into here, and I want to let's not look through our camera real quick. Let's look through here. Correct, yes. Lena asked to be clear that the extra credit is an extra object bouncing, a third object bouncing. It does not include the sphere or the dice. That is correct. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to, I wonder, why is this so funny? Let's see let's zero out all of this rotation. Okay. Okay, that's fine. And then 0, Well, we want this to be kind of in the center of the ball that we're going to add it into. This is why this extra credit is going to be so easy, because it is very simple to just change. I want to go down here. Let's do our top view. We're going to zoom in a lot and move over to make sure that this is kind of centered in there. Let's see from the front if we zoom in. I know there's a lot of lines here, but just zooming in helps you to do that. Kind of centering this object in the middle of the rest of this here. And then let me tilt this a little bit wrong way. There we go. So it's more standing straight. Move it there, up a little bit, over, back a little bit, down. Yeah, that's not bad. Centered here. Looks good, right? We can't see it in here because I need to hit T, holding down shift, and increase the size. We'll do it about that. That's fine. And I'm going to take this corn object and I'm going to drop it into this toon ball kind of area here. And I want to hide the toon ball because we don't want to see the ball. We just want to see the corn object, right? And in order to do that, you have these tiny little dots that are in each layer next to it. And each one of these will allow the object to be like, you can not see it, or it could still be in the render, but you're not seeing it there. And so this top little dot right here, if you click it twice, it will make that it'll make everything kind of disappear. And so then what you have to do is you have to select the green section on the corn, and then the corn will appear here. You don't want to delete the toon ball, because that's where all of the animations are on. Remember, the animations are all done on the toon ball. But if this corn is a child of that toon ball, it will automatically adopts the keyframes and parameters, the changes that were done to it. And so now if I play this, you've got kind of this weird squashing and stretching ear of corn, right? It works. It's obviously going to work better with rounded objects that are kind of shaped more like the ball. But if you guys want to gain extra credit, I would just do this, and because it takes like 2 seconds to do, right? And then you can obviously, if I hit Control R, see the ball is back. We don't want that, so we have to shut that off again. Ooh, does it work that way? If I just put the X? Yeah. I think the X, just making sure the X is over the ball, it won't show up. Let me hit. Perfect. It does not. And then you can always throw this onto your corn object or whatever if you want it to have kind of that cell shaded look. If you duplicate your material, you can have the cell shaded look, but just change the color. So there's a lot of different objects, or there's a lot of different options here that you guys can work within and mess around with, from the materials to what kind of object you want to throw in there. But if you just have a third squashing and stretching object that just replaces this, I just want to see that you guys can essentially replace that object, but keeping the same parameters and changes that are happening. And so if I look through my camera again, I am going to take this corn, hitting E. Let's actually, you want to grab the entire toon ball, right? So let's change this to toon corn null. I'm going to write null here so that it's like a placeholder. We just have that in our mind, right? And I'm going to grab that and I'm going to hit E, and I'm going to move that just kind of back behind so that you guys can see. Then I have this object kind of squashing and stretching and doing all the things behind. That looks cool and everything, but everything is all on, like, everything's bouncing all at the same time, which doesn't look that cool. It kind of doesn't add any this variable to it. And so if we just grab the corn option, the whole thing here, and we go into the dope sheet view, let's just grab this corn, and we're going to move all of these over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames, right? And then I play this. And then it just offsets it, right? We're just sequencing this out. And so I can do that with the dice too. I can move that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it should, at the beginning, it does not do that. So let's go back with that one. There we go. Let's try that. Let's try adjusting the toon ball, right? Let's move that in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and then they're all kind of just bouncing at different times, right? They all have different like starting, endings, and it just gives a little bit more variability to this, and just like makes it look a little bit more pleasing instead of like all in sync. We don't want them all to be in sync, right? And so I'm going to save this, and we're done with the squash and stretch one. And we've got 45 minutes left in class, and I think we can finish out the impact and the bounce scene. Let's go ahead and do the impact scene next, because I think this one, will this one be the easier one? I think the weight one is quicker, and so let's go ahead and do the impact scene here. And we have everything all set up here. We have the studio all set up here as well. So let's add some materials to this one right away. Let's throw in a floor. Let's see. I think if I type in parquet, yeah, like a parquet, it'll give you all these options for your flooring. And I'm going to throw down this, let's do this third one in here. And I'm going to drop that on my floor. Again, I am looking through my camera here. So if I don't want to, I could do that. But I suggest looking through the camera, because this, you're not going to change from this view. And as soon as you start changing from this view for this one, it gets a little harder because everything's already set up. And so I'm going to just kind of close the studio out here. And then I'm going to move the camera in the studio down below. But I definitely want to be looking through the camera here. So make sure that you are looking through that camera. And when I hit Control R, okay, it's going to show that I have the photo here. Great. But there's going to be an issue with sometimes there's an issue with the tiling. Actually, for this one, the tiling looks just fine. Like, you don't actually need to change the tiling of this. But let's say you do for some reason and you want to make it smaller, right? So you're going to select the tag itself, not the material in the material editor, not that, but you're going to select this right here, the material tag. And when you do select that, down at the bottom, you get this option that says tiles, U and V. So this is in one direction and the other direction. And as soon as I start increasing this, it's going to increase how small that floor looks. So now if I hit Control R to do a render preview here, let me do that again. It's going to want to HDR photo that. Yeah, that's fine. It's going to show like a smaller tiling of the floor. It's like changing the size of your little pieces, right? And so it's going to make your object look bigger. When the floor is too big, it's going to make your objects look small, right? And we want the objects to look fairly big here. So changing that tiling will be important with some of these materials here. Lena asked, will I be reviewing the principles of motion design for C4D next Tuesday or Thursday? I just want to know when I should submit it in time. Tuesday. I should be reviewing these on Tuesday. Good question there. But yeah, that way on Thursday I can do lecture any of the rest of this. But I didn't really receive, I graded all of your guys' principles of motion design for After Effects today. And so I don't really have anything to go over today for you guys unless I got some new ones in which I can check real quick. But you know, that way on Thursday I can go over anyone else's who turns this one in next Thursday, right? But let's shoot for Tuesday to have this done. And so we've got, though I'm just going to kind of speed through this one because this one takes a little bit. We've got these the material down on the floor, we've updated the tiling. Let's say it's slightly pixelated. And we don't want that. You just go select the tag again. And under, I think it's, is it under the tag here? That's correct. That's correct. You don't have to do that. Maybe it's under the, you know where it's going to be? It's going to be in the viewport. Texture preview size. Okay. If you want to see it more in, if you want to see it less pixelated here, what you have to do is you have to select the material up here and you go into viewport tab down in your attributes panel, and under the texture preview size you're going to change that to something higher, so probably this one, and then I can see it more like in it's crisper, it looks nicer, and then if I hit R it's still going to look good, but I just can see a little bit more like better in my render preview. It doesn't look so pixelated. And so we're going to throw on, there's already a material on our text. Let's go ahead and change the text to say something else. Object. We want it to say impact. And I'm also going to change this to Poppins. And I'm going to change the size here. So I want the height down a little bit. That's not bad. I'm going to shuffle it over a little bit so that a little bit is similar distance on the sides. Impact here. Probably going to pick a bolder version of this one for this. That's great. Let's change this height down to 325 and move that back over. The depth looks fine. I'm not going to change that. And there is already like a white material on that, so I'm not going to change that either. So my text is already kind of done. I'm going to save this here. And let's throw a material onto our, to the like post and the hammers. We're going to go for like a metallic look again. Metal. Let's go out on the model, and here I think I'm going to go with the bronze. And let's drop the bronze on the post. And then let's pick kind of in a different bronze for the hammers. Let's drop it on this hammer. Oh, it only drops it on the section. Let me hit Control R to see what it looks like. Real quick render preview. Okay, not terrible there. I don't mind that one. But I want to make sure that that's on the entire hammer and not just on that bottom section, right? So I'm going to undo that. And what I'm going to do is notice that there's in your objects panel here, you have a null called F hammer, which has all of your objects in it, right? So we want to be selecting only the null to animate. And then we also want to add the material to that section there. So I'm going to delete this material here because that's not the one I want. And I'm going to drop this bronze. I'm going to take this second one here and bring that into my material manager. And then I'm going to drop that on the entire null here of the F hammer. And that way, when I do that, it colors the entire hammer and not just sections of it, right? And so I want to do that also to the right hammer. I'm going to delete this one and I'm going to hit, I think I can hit Control and drag. and it will also copy that. And then the post, let me go to, there's the plane, this is the ball. Is it in the studio? Yes, the bar is in the studio. I'm going to delete that off of there, and I want it to be the same material for the bar as well. Now I'm going to save this. And Lena asks, will we be rendering this by viewport renderer? No, let's try and render this in the physical base renderer, right? So that you get this cool looking material. This should be nice looking. So like a nicer render for this. If it's taking forever to render it out and you're having troubles, then yeah, you can render it in the viewport renderer for your initial grade. But when we go to put this in the in your portfolio, I would like to see it in a nice render and not just like the viewport render for that. And for the ball, let me do there's a couple different options we've done in the past. We've thrown like patterns on there. Let me see if there's like a pattern material. Oh, that's not terrible looking. That's kind of neat. Gradient preset. Let's do kind of a natural looking. So maybe like a gravel for one of these. Maybe the second one on the first ball. The whole thing is that we want a pattern on the ball so that when it's rolling, we can see that it's rolling and not just in one spot, right? That gravel doesn't look terrible. I'll go with it. That's fine. Since we're going quick. And then ooh, we've got granite options. Let's do a granite for the back one. In fact, let's swap these. So let me throw this one on there. And then I want to delete this, the gravel one. And I'm going to bring the, if you need to remove the material tags, just come up here and you can remove them by selecting it and just deleting it. Let's the rear ball. Let us add that gravel to that rear ball right there. So if I hit Control R, okay. We've kind of got this like natural look. We've got natural wood, we've got some brass, and we've got these balls here that have, they look heavy. In fact, we should probably make one of them look like it's going to be a lighter material. So granite might not be the best option for, granite would be cool for the back one then, because that's going to be the heavy ball. Let me delete this material here. That's fine. Delete that. Let's move the front ball to the rear ball. And then this one, we're going to do something lighter. So maybe, I mean, we could try grass. It's gonna, might look funny. Yes, correct, Lena. So she just asked if we choose the physical base renderer and then keep the other settings the same as last time, and that's correct. That kind of looks like a weird marble. I'm gonna delete that. I don't want to spend too much time doing this though, so maybe foam. I wonder if there's like a foam material. Nope. Let's just go into materials here. Again, we're just looking for the regular, not the redshift ones. This carpet one could look neat. Let's drop that on and see what that looks like. Is it going to show up black now? Yeah, what did I do? Okay, let's just delete this. Let's try and add this white material again. Okay, that worked. Let me just do this. I mean, it just must be this material that's not working very well with it. You don't have to match the colors in all three scenes like they did in the After Effects project. Because your guys are having a little bit more fun with materials here this time, so I would just worry more about getting something that works on this. Like these ones aren't working for me, right? And it just might be because of the light settings and everything that's here. So I might have to, it's just dropping these in and seeing what works. This one's not working as well. Huh. Will it work? Will it not? I do not think it dragged in there. Oh, that's for... All right. Remember, it's got those things in the bottom. It won't let you use them. Oh, didn't work. That I might just throw it in. Okay, I'm going to do a different option for you guys that I did in them before, which allows you to like add a pattern onto it yourself. And so what I'm going to do is up here under create, or you can hit this plus here, and you're going to create a new material, but instead of a default material, we're going to do a PBR material. PBR stands for physically based renderer. And so this one's going to allow us to place it. Let me place this material on the object here. And it's going to work with that physical render like we were talking about before. And so if you want to add like a pattern to this, right, because we want to add something that's going to allow us to see that rolling, that rotation, you want to go down to the, I think it is in the reflectance tab. Let me just double check. Yes, it is going to be in the reflectance. I just had to double check my notes. And down here under texture, we're going to click on that, and we're going to go to surfaces, and we are going to click on tiles. And so when I add that surface here, it's going to give us obviously a tiled look on that. But if we double click on that, we can come in here and we can change what type of pattern it is, right? So we can change this to mini circles if we want to, or hexagons, or you could do radial lines if you want to. Now, these all don't look, I think you can change the orientation of where it's at, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work well on the rounded objects. So sometimes you just kind of have to go through. The sawtooth seems to work good, and update this based on what, what looks best. And you can always try changing the orientation of the material as well to see what you like a little bit more. But this gives you the option to change everything, right? So you have control over the tile colors, the grout color, which is the little black lines in between is the grout. You can change your grout width. So if you want that thicker looking, you can increase that. We'll put that 25. And we'll just kind of, you can randomize your color here if you want to. And so you can just pick any kind of colors that you want, play around with this a little bit more. The only thing is when you're doing this, just make sure that you're thinking about, color theory and stuff when you start putting in colors to this. But I'm just going to leave this material on the ball right now because I want to get animating here. And the first thing that we're going to animate is the hammers. So let's work on the front hammer, which is going to be the light option for the swing, right? So it's going to hit the ball, it's going to swing through that, and then it is going to settle down into its own like natural swing of things, right? Now, the heavy hammer is going to swing and it's going to hit that heavy ball and it's going to ricochet off that heavy ball and it's going to then swing into its own, like slowing down into its resting position. So we're going to work with the light one first, and I'm just going to close this material manager out so I can see this. And we want to go under coordinates, making sure that you're selecting the null up here and not anything inside of here. And we want to start animating the rotation. Now this is the Y rotation that we're going to be working with. And I'm going to zero that out here. And at the beginning, we're going to bring this all the way to the beginning. I'm going to hit Control D because I want to change my project settings here to be 120. Remember, that'll be 5 seconds. And taking this playhead, bringing that to the beginning, selecting that hammer. And then I'm going to, let's see, swing this hammer back so that it's like lifted up. So we'll just do -45. That'll work. -50. And we're going to keyframe that. And then we're going to move ahead 12 frames. And we're going to swing that in the opposite direction, right? So probably at this point, let's go to 40. Because it's gonna lose momentum on every swing that it's going through, right? But the thing about a pendulum swing is the timing of each swing is going to be the same. So I'm doing every 12 frames, which means I'm going to have to consistently do every 12 frames until we're at the end of our swing. So it might take a while, right? Because this is going to be a light ball. It's swinging through, it's going to hit the ball and it's going to continue to swing through that. And then it's going to, go back and forth. And so I'm just going to type in these values here as slowly like decreasing in amount for each time I move. So first of all, I started at -50, swinging through at 40. I'm going to move another 12 frames here. And then instead of -50, I'm going to do let's do -30. And then I'm going to keyframe that. I'm going to move ahead 12 frames. And instead of this one, if I hover over, was 40, I am going to go to 20. I'm going to keyframe that. And then I'm going to move ahead 12 frames. And what was this last one? -30. So I'm just going to go down 20 units each time, right? So instead of -30, I'll be -10. I'm going to keyframe that. Bring it up another 12 frames. And if I hover over this, it was 20. So I'm going to go down to, it should be at 0 at this point. 0. But I don't want it to fully be at 0 yet because I want it to kind of slowly swing down there. So I'm going to actually drop it instead down 15. So I'm going to put in 5 here. And then I'm going to move another 12 frames. And instead of -10, I'm going to do, I don't know, -2. Because we're going to slowly get down to that spot. And then I'm going to move, what is that, 84, another 12 frames. And that's when I'm going to hit add in 0 here. And so now when I play this, you're going to see a nice, slow, like an even looking pendulum swing back down, right? In fact, I might decrease the timing of all of this. So I'm going to select all of these and move these back in so that this is on the 6th frame. So it kind of happens quicker. Right there. Let's see if I like that. Yeah, I don't mind that. And I'm going to save this. In fact, I'm going to bring it out an extra 2 frames so that I want this one to be on 8. So every 8 frames. So let me, might have to adjust these, right? So 16. Let me change this back. I think this is okay when I dragged it. I'm going to drag this into 48 frames here, so it's 2 seconds long. It's okay if it starts to desync in the amount of timing between it, as long as when you play it and it looks like it's like slowing down at a consistent rate. I'm going to save that. And then I want to go into the F curve, and I'm just going to take these and holding down, not shift, holding down, I think, control, and then just kind of dragging these out a little bit so that they are just, yeah, holding down control allows you, if you hold on shift, it breaks everything, which you don't want. So holding down control allows you to move in a, like consistent, and doesn't allow you to go up or down and mess it up like that. I'm just going to select all of those, and I'm going to do that. And that allows this kind of hammer swing to just like hang a little bit at each end. In fact, I think it's just a little bit too intense. So I'm going to bring that back in a little bit more. Bring it back out. Just like messing around with it until I find something that I like. Yeah, that looks good. Perfect. And so we have our first hammer swing down, which is great, right? That took seconds versus doing this in After Effects, which takes a lot longer. Doing it inside of Cinema 4D allows you to like grab these and change Bezier handles and stuff all at once. And it auto eases everything for you, right? So if I wanted these to be linear, I could select the linear option right here and it would all move at the same speed. But it auto adds that easing for you, which makes it so much simpler when it goes to like updating your curves and stuff. And so I want to go to where the hammer hits the ball, and which would be right about here, right? But the hammer is going through the ball right now, which I don't want. So if I go back into this F curve and I have all of these selected and I hold control, if I just nudge this in a little bit, it will allow me to change. I could do that and then come back one, right? Let's see. One frame does a lot. So if I just hold on shift and I bring that back here, it allows me to like mitigate that issue that was there. So you might have to, you're going to have to adjust this based on what's kind of happening and where it's getting hit there. And then also you can change that by, if I do this and drag this out a little bit more, right? Holding down 2 to do this here. If I wanted this all at 60 frames, instead of, I could do that, move this in another one, and then it's going to hit that directly. And I can still go into my F curve here and kind of holding down control, kind of update that just a little bit more to get it right about there. That's nice. I'll keep it like this, 60 frames. Cool. And so we want to move to the beginning of our timeline with our playhead. And we want the ball now to be hit. And so I've got the ball. I'm going to go up here and select the ball. And the only thing that the ball is going to do is it's going to move forward in Z space, right? So if I just go here and I keyframe the Z space at the beginning, and then I move ahead, it's going to move very quickly in a short distance. So I'm going to go to 12 frames, and I'm going to move this off screen and then keyframe, add a keyframe there. And so when I play this, oh, let me see where that initial, we don't want the initial ball position to be right here, right? We want it to be where that frame hits. So we're going to have to move that right over here. Right there. Yeah. So you're going to have to move your playhead, not to the beginning, but to wherever it makes impact with the ball. And that's where you want your first keyframe to be. And then it's going to hit that ball, and that ball's going to go flying off screen, right? In fact, it kind of goes through a little bit too much, so I might just take this side and move it back one more. Kind of makes, I'm going to have to adjust that curve, maybe the timing here. Let's bring that in. Let's leave it at 60, but let's adjust the curve of these. Holding control. We don't want them to be linear. Right here, we want it to make contact, so holding control, there we go. Okay, that looks better. Like it actually makes contact with it. So you might have to go back and forth and do some adjusting there with that. But let's select that ball, and let's change the curve of the ball so it actually looks like it's being hit, right? So we're going to go back into F-curve mode, and we want to bring this, select this bottom one here, and bring this up because we want a nice, sharp, fast movement. And then it's going to slow down off screen, right? So that's a nice quick hit. And it kind of looks like it starts to move before, so let's adjust this keyframe forward a little bit. Makes contact there. Oop, I did not mean to do that. There we go. That's nice. Hitting H on here so I can see this. Grabbing the hammer, going back to here, hitting H on everything so I can re-see it. Let's see. Boom. Oh, what do I want to change? Is it going to be the ball? Or the hammer? I think I've already kind of changed the hammer enough. Let's update the ball curve a little bit more. Not holding, just make sure you select the one, the base keyframe right there. Now if I play it, it should be quick enough that it doesn't look like, yeah, you can't see there. There we go. That looks good. And now we want to add a rotation into this, right? So right kind of when the ball is right about here, we'll go to the keyframe that the ball is on. We'll go back to our dope sheet view. And we're going to select the ball again. And we're going to rotate it in, yes, in the Y space here. So I'm going to keyframe that. And then I'm going to move to off when it's off screen here. And what you want to do, because of the way that the ball is hit, you don't roll this way. When the ball is being hit by the hammer, it's going to roll backwards, actually. So you want to go into the negatives, I think. Wait, is it the negatives? Let me see this real quick. The rotation. I know I have that in my notes. Yeah, it has to be in a negative value. So negative, let's do negative 60 here, and we're going to keyframe that. And so it should work there. Does that work? Yes. Okay, that's correct. Nice. And let's kind of move the rotation to happen 1 to 2 keyframes after it's hit. Probably 1 will be enough to offset that. And you don't really see a lot of that happening here. We can shorten this up so that it happens faster. I actually like it longer here. We can also change, because the rotation is going to happen so quickly because the ball's getting hit off screen quickly. If we go to our dope sheet view here, and we want this to happen quickly, but we're going in the negative value, right? So we need to go like this. We need it to kind of happen very quickly like that. There you go. That nice kind of sliding, because it's going so fast, it's kind of like skidding across this hardwood floor. And so it's causing the rotation to stop off screen, which is fine. That you don't need it to continue going way further out. It'll just sell the fact that this thing is a lighter ball and it's being hit and it's moving a lot quicker. Now, in order to do the hammer, the heavy one, we're done with the light one right now. So we're going to move our playhead back to the beginning, and we're going to have a very similar like animation to the front hammer, except it's going to ricochet off this heavy ball, right? So let's just hide this text for the moment so we can see everything. And we are going to select that rear hammer, and we're going to keyframe that rotation, that Y rotation. And then we're going to move ahead. Where's that hammer position? Or the hammer rotation is here. Okay, so we're going to move to 9 keyframes here. And we're going to also go back. So I think this one was, these were 40, huh? Or I'm sorry, negative 50 at the beginning. So I'm going to grab the rotation here, select the hammer, type in negative 50 because we want them to kind of start in the same spot. Keyframe that back there. And then I'm going to move ahead to 9 frames here and have this swinging down, but it's going to stop right there, and I'm going to keyframe that. And then on the next move back, where's the rotation keyframes? Okay, right here. I'm trying to just line them up with the other one. Instead of moving forward and through, it is going to bounce back off of the, heavy ball. So I'm going to go backwards. Probably not as high, negative 45. And then I'm going to keyframe that. And then I'm going to move ahead. And then it's going to swing through. So this one was 2. Now we're going to swing fully through to probably, I don't know, 35 will be okay. And move forward. And negative 35. I think at this point we can kind of sync up these numbers almost. Move forward. And we'll do positive 20. Oh. And then moving here, we'll do negative 20. Keyframe that. And then here, right, this one's coming to a stop. So we can probably type in, let's drop these values a little bit more then. So this one was 2. I brought it to negative 45. Let's drop this to negative 35. Negative 35. Whenever you make a change, you have to re-keyframe. Right, so 2, negative 35. This one will be, let's do 20. Change that. This one will be negative 15. I think that'll work. Move up here, and instead of 20, this one will be 10. And then moving up here, this one will be negative 5. And then moving up here, this one will go down to 0. See how this works. Values aren't exactly the same, right? But similar. So if I play this, it's going to, and again, they're going to end about the same. But this is a ricochet, remember? So we have to come in here, and this first section where it swings and it hits on this, we have to create a bounce. So we have to hold down Shift and break that and bring that down so that it, boom, bounces off of that. In fact, I think, does this one, do I have to bring this one? Yes, so you're going to want to bring both of these ones down to create a bounce on this first impact right here. And then the rest of it will eventually just fall in line to be something smoother. And we can grab these keyframes, selecting all these ones, and holding down Control and kind of just exaggerate these out a little bit more. Boom. So you get a nice heavy bounce, like a nice bounce off of there. And then where it makes contact right here is where we're going to start the animation of the heavy ball. And again, this ball is not going to go very far and it's not going to rotate a lot. So we are going to keyframe the Z position. And then we're going to move ahead in time a little bit further. It's going to take longer to get where it needs to go, right? And then we are going to move this ahead, but not very far, probably like that. And don't forget to keyframe that. Let's go ahead and look at our dope sheet view. And so, boom. And it moves it there. Even could be slower. So let's extend this out a little bit more to 36. Let's bring this one. Yeah, let's try this. All right, not bad. But we have to update the curve, right? Because we want it to, we're going to grab this and we want it to be real slow. Boom. All right, that's a good start. And once we add that rotation in, it will also make it look a lot slower too. So then I'm going to select the ball again and the Y rotation there. I'm going to keyframe that. And then I'm going to move this to the end here and go into a negative value. So negative 75. Keyframe that. Boom. And that's going to make it look like a much heavier ball than the other one. And so if I go in here and I can grab this position and I can stretch it out even further to slow it down, right? And then same with the rotation. I'm going to grab that and stretch that out further to slow it down. But then I'm also going to shift it over a couple keyframes. And then when I play this, I'm going to bring that, actually not shift it over two. I think if it's shifted at least one is okay, but any more than that and it starts to look funny. But it looks like a much heavier ball. In fact, I'm gonna shift it before. Let's try that. There we go. If we shift that rotation before, in fact, let's try that with the fastball here. Let's try the rotation and shift it before. There we go. I think that looks cool. I think that we could actually take the rotation and position of this one and just extend it out a tiny bit. Right there. There we go. That looks much better. I'm going to save this. And I know we're at time, right? So I'm going to turn that impact on. And then what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to save that again. And then this one is probably the easier one to do. Now, I can go over it real quick with you guys because it'll only take us a couple seconds because we're going to do a bounce, right? And we're going to subsequently bring it down each time. So I'm going to hit Control D and I'm going to bring up my settings here and I'm going to type in 120. And then my preview max, I want it at 120 as well. 24 frames a second looks good. Now we have a heavy ball, which is a bowling ball. And then we have the ping pong ball here. And in fact, I'm going to readjust my camera view because I want it to kind of be centered. I'm not sure why. That's not allowing me because there's a protection tag on it. So just delete that protection tag. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to just slightly move it over here so that everything's centered. And then I'm going to go to the type. I'm going to object and I'm going to change this to mass or weight. I think mass will be fine. I'm going to change that again to the pop-ins. Sorry that it's we're going late into class, but I want it to be, I want you guys to get all of these and not have to go over them again later. I'm going to drop that down to the floor. I'll let you guys do your materials on this one yourself. But the ping pong ball, right? So the ping pong ball, same as we did before, is going to bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce. So it might continue bouncing off of your time, your allotted time, the 120 frames. But we're going to just animate the Y position of this right now. So I'm going to go there and select that. And then I'm going to move to 12 frames and I'm going to drop this down to the ground, making sure that it looks like it hits the ground. And let me type in 0 there. 12. Will that work? 12 works fine. And then I'm going to move 24 frames and I am going to, this one we cannot duplicate, right? Because this bounce is going to be less and less each time. Yeah, you can change the color of anything that you want in here. Put a material on the floor, put a new material on the text if you want. You guys can get a little bit more creative with what you want to do here. But but we can't loop this one, right? Because the height is going to change with each bounce, right? And so I'm just going to, though, take this and I'm going to hit Control and I'm going to duplicate it. And then I'm going to move here and I'm going to Control and duplicate it again at 48 frames. Sorry, that's where my playhead should have been. And then at 72 frames, I'm going to Control and duplicate. And probably one more time. So let me move over this way. Maybe twice more. Let's see, 90, 84, 96. Control duplicate. 108 should be plus 12 is 120. Perfect. Drag that off, right? So it'll happen off screen. And then, so this bouncing is happening. We're going to select these and we're going to go into our F curve here. And the cool thing is that we can shift and click. We can click all of these bottom ones. Here, let me just make sure I center this all here so we can see it. I'm going to grab all these bottom ones right here. And I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to turn these all into bounces. Bringing that up to right there. Probably around this 120 section. And then these ones at the top, I'm going to select all of these. And I'm going to control and drag these out. But then what I want to do is I want to bring these down lower and lower, right? So I'm going to holding down control, not control, don't hold that down. I think if you hold down shift and move down, it'll be okay. But I'm going to move that down to there. And then I'm going to keep going down further, right to here. Grabbing this, going down further to here. These ones are going to have to kind of come in a little bit more, holding that control. Then I'm going to grab these ones and move them down, moving about 100 on each graph each time. And then, of course, we're going to have to do this. And now these ones at the bottom are going to have to change right here, right? So there and here as well, so that we don't have any weird overshooting happening. This one, not so much. This one doesn't have to, but these two do. There, and then this one, drag that down here. Grab this, drag only this one, even further down because I can see. And then this one, drag this one down as well. And so now, when I play this, boom, 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 boom. It's going to bounce more like a ping pong ball, right? But let's say we want to add an X parameter into here now. We want to have it move forward off screen. So I'm going to start. The nice thing is that everything's already separated. The dimensions are. I'm going to grab this ping pong ball and I'm going to move my playhead to the beginning here. And I'm going to keyframe that X position. And then I'm going to move my playhead to the end here, which allows you to, let me see, only 120 frames. But that's okay because we're just going to move this off screen. And I'm going to adjust that X so that it's no longer showing, right? Because I'm in my camera view. And then I'm going to keyframe that change there. And so now you can see we have this bounce happening and it's moving forward. Boom, boom, boom. With one keyframe to the X, with two keyframes on the X value, and we have this like moving in a different space, right? So that's really cool. There's a lot of power here inside of Cinema 4D when you're doing this. And now I'll leave you guys because I want to be conscious of your time to do the heavy ball on your own. And try to remember that with the heavy ball, it's going to be much shorter distance. It's going to be much shorter amount of, like, less bounces, right? It's not going to bounce nearly as many times, probably like 2 or 3 times, maybe 3 or 4 times, and then it's going to like come to a stop. And I want you to kind of move that. It's not going to go nearly as far forward. And so I want you guys to try that one out on your own because I want to see that you're grasping the concept on how this mass is working and how these are working for you. I have confidence after seeing your guys' work last week from last project that you guys will be able to do that on your own. And then just adding the materials and doing what you need to do to make this look pretty. You don't have to worry about the studio or anything. That will be fine. Now, as far as the render settings go, let's go over that real quick. I'm going to go up here into my render settings, and this is under viewport render, but we can change to physical renderer, and you'll just change that, and then you go to save, and then you pick your spot, PNG. Always add an alpha channel just because. The output, making sure that you're on all frames, everything looks okay, and then you can render it out that way. If you have to do the physical base renderer, you're going to click on that, and under the, where is it at? Viewport renderer option, you'll click under filter and you're going to select geometry only so that it doesn't show any of those lines and all that stuff in there. We don't want to see that. So make sure you select geometry only if you have to do a viewport render. But other than that, you guys have the tools you need to complete this project and do this last bounce here. Considering you guys kind of get the drill and know how these graphs should be looking, that you will have an easier time with this. I know, you might struggle a little bit because you're in 3D space, but I think that you guys are going to be okay with getting this done and doing it really well. So I have faith in you guys. And then on Tuesday, we will go over everyone who has turned theirs in. We'll give review on that. And then we'll be jumping into the next project. And we'll go over questions. Hopefully we'll get to the point where we can start at least reviewing the next project. I know going over reviews and stuff takes a little bit of time, so it'll depend on where we get. So if you want to have your feedback in by next Tuesday, then have this project done by then. I think the most time that is going to take you guys for here is probably deciding materials, because that's a new can of worms that we're opening, and then also rendering itself, because if you're using the physical base render, the physical render, it's going to take a lot more time because it's going to account for all these shadows and the highlights and all that stuff, versus doing it with the viewport render, which isn't going to account for everything. It's just going to look a little bit duller and not as fine-tuned and polished. And then if you guys want to gain extra credit, you just have to add the third squishing object. Now, if you guys are watching online and following the online class, that third squishing object and the cell shaded object are in this project here, but I moved them to this one because it just makes more sense. But if for some reason you're not catching this live stream tonight and you're watching the old one and you have it in here, I'm not going to dock points for it, right? But other than that, I hope you guys have a good night. Do you guys have any questions in the chat right now, or are you guys all set? I know you're watching. I can see everyone who's watching. I really can't see who's watching, but I appreciate that you guys stick around. I hope I don't bum you out. Like, that's the one thing I don't want to do is bum you guys out. Cool, cool. Elena's good. Nakara, you're good. Yeah, you guys have a good weekend. Have fun this weekend. You know, take breaks from this if you need to, but I will see you guys all on Tuesday. So have a good one. Bye.